Attendees should fill out the feedback form. The link for the same will be posted later in the Q&A box. Please note, certificates will be awarded to participants who have attended both sessions and have duly filled out the feedback form for both days. Thank you. A very good morning to one and all present here. I, Sakshi, warmly welcome you all to the second day of the tomorrow, presented to you by the Department of Commerce, Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce. We are happy to see you all back again for the second day, and we are sure you are equally excited to hear from our speakers of the day. I now request Mrs. Devashri Deshpande, Assistant Professor in Commerce, to welcome our distinguished guests and participants to this webinar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sakshi. Good morning. I welcome you all to the second day of our national webinar organized by Department of Commerce. Before we hand over our digital dais to our today's eminent speakers, I just want to brief some pointers from yesterday's session. We understand the concept of the great churn elaborated to us by Ms. Suchitra Singh Basu, and Dr. Arpita Kaul highlighted about the importance of work-life balance and work-life integration. Continuing with the learning ethos, today we will get a glimpse of people analytics from Honorable Speaker Mr. Samir Munje, and later we will have a talk on Future 2030 by our respected speaker Ms. Shweta Rana. Without any further delay, I hand over the platform to Sakshi. Happy learning.
Thank you, ma'am, for your welcome address. With this, we now arrive at the most awaited segment of the day, our discussion with our esteemed speakers. Before I introduce the first speaker, I would like to iterate that we will have a Q&A section after the end of the discussion. So kindly drop in your questions in the Q&A box. It is with great honor that I introduce the first speaker for the day, Mr. Samir Munje. Samir Munje is an experienced senior principal consultant with a demonstrated history of working in the information technology and service industry. Sir has a 28 plus years of total IT experience, including 20 plus years of experience in portfolio management, practice management, service delivery management, account management, and competency building, PR sales management, and customer relationship. Currently, he is the global head of HCM COE Oracle practice. He is skilled in global delivery, management, strong HCM consulting professional with a BCS focused in computer science from Garware College, Pune University. Sir is a certified project management professional and has participated in leadership and strategic thinking program, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Best Project Team Award 2013, nominated for High Potential, Most Valuable Player, Individual Contribution, published white paper on managing collaboration at Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation System Conference. He is the recipient of Bright Gold Certification Award and has bagged the Best Project Team Award 2013. Sir, a very warm welcome to you, and we are incredibly excited to have you here among us to share your valuable insights on people analytics, following which we can dwell into an interactive session. Over to you, sir.
Hi, thank you very much for the warm welcome and introduction. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me share my screen, and we can then jump on to the today's topic for people analytics. Let me know once you're able to see my screen as well.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, so thanks again for your welcome, and I would have really liked it to have this session on in person, but unfortunately because of COVID restrictions and all, we need to have this on web. Uh, I understand these topics may sound slightly technical for you. You know, what is this analytics? You know, how is it anything to do with HR and so on and so forth, right? So what I would try to do is to try to keep it more interactive and more basics, right? To give you the concept about why, what, how, right? And when, right? Is people analytics required, right? In terms of the technology part of it, we can definitely dwell into the
Excuse me,
details if
sir.
required. Yeah.
For interrupting, but your camera is off.
Okay, sure. Just give me 1 second. Just 1 second. Huh?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So that's what I would like to do. So now, before we start into this interesting topic of analytics, right? I wanted to start with how has HR evolved over last 50, 60 years, right? And many of you probably may not have been even have visualized some of these inflections that has happened in HR, but this is how it started, right? In terms of the technology and how HR has evolved, right? Initially, when it started, it was more, HR was more about a back office function. It was more for your compensation, benefits, employee relations, management of compliance, and so on and so forth, right? It was not even for for people administration. It was more for compliance and back office function. And from a technology standpoint, it was majority of them were mainframe, or some of them even manual, right? A lot of these things were still on the paper and file things when we started. Over a period of years, what happened is, with the advent of technology, with databases, RDBA bases, and client server technology, and even the Microsoft Excel and all those things, right? Uh, a lot of things have changed from an IT standpoint, but still HR continued to be, more of a personal administrative functions. But obviously, they got maturity in terms of how to increase the diversity, the equal employment opportunity, and so on and so forth, right? And at the first time in 1980, in US, the term of human resource management was coined, right? Earlier, it was probably an admin department or a personal department. But in 1980s, where there was a need to identify something like a human resource, right? But still, as you can see by the name, it still resonates as a human resource, which is like machine or any other thing, right? It is not really gone into the function of how really can add as a partnership. And eventually, as the time progressed, in 2000, that's where the core term of human capital management was coined, right? That's where human resources was turned or transformed into human capital, right? And a lot of globalization happened at that point of time, where a lot of organizations went global, and then the whole understanding about how the global HR can be managed, right? And with the advent of ERP, right, which is more about SAP or Oracle, or integrated systems, right, where you can do all the functions in one, the whole concept from an HR standpoint change, and everything can become integrated in one single platform, right, which is the ERP that we see, right? And HR started becoming more about business partner, right? It had an equal stake in the organization, like how the finance, or the sales, or the supply chain, and so on and so forth, the other department kind of got, right? That's where it got the whole concept of being a value added trusted business partner. Okay. Then, as we see, the whole millennials boom came in, and the whole advent of smack, right, which is social media, the term that you may be aware, right, which is social, mobile, analytics, and cloud, right? That's where the entire ecosystem got disrupted, right, with regards to how HR functions. Right now, HR has now becoming an integral part of any organization, which not only helps in management of human resources, but also you know with the growth of an organization and with companies top line as well as bottom line. That's where it becomes more of a strategic partner than compared to a business partner, right? And then the whole concept about how can I be nimble, how can I be more digital, how can I be modern HR, right? How can I embrace the technology to really become that the partner, strategic partner, and really contribute towards the growth of an organization, right? It is no more about just hire and retire and manage the employee, but I can really make an impact. And we'll see some of the use cases and example how what I mean about being truly a strategic partner and truly having an impact on the business. And the whole concept about employee advocacy, right? Whether what is being the best employer for working moms, right? Or the best employer for millennials, or so and so forth, right? That started getting more thing, right? Because that's where the whole employee advocacy started getting into more effect, and how we can have an organization branding help attract the talent, right? In that sense. So this is how the overall ecosystem has evolved, both from a HR as a business function as well as the technology, right? And just wanted to dwell into the just wanted to give you, because some of you may not be aware of how things were in the past and how things were managed. Wanted to bring that prelude here. Okay, now moving on to the next. Now, how is it important and why is it relevant for people analytics, right? That's where I would go into the next part, right? As you have seen the evolution of HR and technology, right? This had a direct impact on the analytics part of it, right? Or the data part of it, right? Now, data always existed, right? It existed even in 1960s. It exists today in 22. But how do I harness that data has actually changed, right? So that's where the whole concept about, if you see in the early 60s or 70s, right? It was HR function was or more about standard reports. Okay, what am I doing with regards to what is my employee turnover, what is my hiring, what is my learning percentage, what is my attrition, and so on and so forth, right? What are the dashboards? Okay, which employees are there in which organization, which location, what is my count, head count reporting, and so on and so forth, right? So that's what we call it as the descriptive reporting, right? Where I can show what it is, I use that data to show, right? So it is what happened and what is happening, right? Then, as we saw, right, fine, it is good that we have the data, but what do I do with data, right? Why did it happen? So I'll take an example which I've shown in my slide as well, as you can see, just to give you a view of how this has really impacted, and just to give you a use case, right? So let's take an case of employee attrition, right? So earlier it was to be when it was an operational reporting or descriptive, it was about what is my attrition, right? My attrition is 15% or 18%, or it is attrition is this percentage by this location or by this department, right? Then the question started coming, okay, why is this attrition happening, right? Why are my people leaving an organization for a particular department or a particular location or a particular geography, right? That's where you started getting the diagnostic reporting, right? Where I started looking at the root cause. I started dwelling into the data. Fine, right? It is, you tell me what is the issue, but I need to know what is the reason for it, right? um, so treating more of a cause and not the symptom, right? That's what we say, right? Typically treat the cause and not the, so that's where it started, that diagnostic reporting, right? Then you know while that continued, now the next trend was the predictive analytics, right? Can I know before the attrition happens, so that I can plan myself accordingly, I can plan better, right? So that's where I started using the data of, for what could it happen when to doing the forecasting and doing the what if analysis, right? So can I predict to an extent what will be my attrition next quarter or next 6 months or next 1 year based on the data, right? So that's where they started using the data for predictive analytics, right? And then, right? And now the next stage is more about prescriptive analytics, right? So how can I, so now fine, I understand that I have an attrition, this is what the reason for attrition is, this is what I can, but what can I do, right? It is just knowing the fact that I will be having 30% at 15% attrition or 4% attrition doesn't help, right? Can I do something proactively to arrest that attrition? Can I do something more proactively? So that's where we call it prescriptive analytics, right? So this is how over a period of years, as we traverse through the journey from 1970s, 60s, which I showed earlier, the change has happened in HR as a function, as a business a function in the organization. That has a direct correlation with how the analytics is done, how the reporting is done. Hence, I wanted to kind of give you that there is a direct correlation or a direct one-to-one relationship between how HR has evolved as from a personal department to a business partner to a strategic partner, and analytics has a significant say in that, right? And as I said, these are the examples. I just give an example of attrition, right, which is what it is, right? Now organizations are looking at HR for the business planning. Okay, it is no more a function that you just manage the policy about your leave policy or relocation policies or hiring policies, right? It is now the CHROs, the CIOs, the CEOs are looking at HR to really give them the insights about so many aspects with regards to employees. As you can know, right, any organization, whether it's a manufacturing or a finance or a supply chain or an IT, right? Employees and the human capital is the extremely important part of it, right? None of the organizations can succeed if the human capital is not satisfied or the people are not satisfied. And hence there is a need to really figure out how do I make this use of analytics to really make my human capital successful, right? So hence I wanted to give a view on how this is helping or how this is has evolved over a period of years and got the maturity, right? So they say the data is a new oil, right? And there is a reason why they say data is a new oil, right? Because if you look at the oil in a crude form, we can't use oil in a crude form. You have to treat it, you have to harness it, then only you will be able to use it for whatever your daily uses, right? Similarly, the data, right? You have so much of unstructured data, you have so much of data that is there lying, but it may not be used unless I use it in my proper way and create meaningful insights, right? And creating meaningful analytics, then suddenly that becomes really a goal, right, for us. So that's the real importance of data and analytics, and how this has traversed through the so many years in that, right? Now a lot of confusion. Okay, what is the difference between a matrix and analytics, right? A lot of people use this very interchangeably in that sense also. Okay, is matrix same as analytics? So I wanted to, before we go into the analytics deep dive, wanted to kind of give a brief about what is the difference between the matrix and analytics, right? So matrix is, typically, if you take about the reports that we talk about, right? It is more about the standard reporting that you will have, right? Which is more about how do I, manage my day-to-day HR, right? How do I manage my hiring? How do I manage my learning, training, and so on, so right? But analytics is about, taking the same data and putting the strategic analysis of how do I use that data for my future use, right? It is second part is it is standard, which is there for the measurement. Here it is systematic analytics, right? So as I talked about, how do you treat the data, how do you harness the data, how do you really make some sense out of that data is for meaningful insights, is what analytics, right? Whereas metrics is just about giving the numbers that you need to have, right? uh, the it from a measurement, it is a single point data measurement, whereas analytics, you are able to connect multiple dots, right? You are able to connect your multiple systems, whether it's human resources, sales, finance, learning, performance, and so on and so forth, right? And really get some data, and we'll see some of uh, the way actually it is done in people analytics, right? How do you actually do that, right? So that is more about at where you can actually harness data using multiple data points, right? Uh, and metrics is more tactical, operational. It is for running my day-to-day function. It is to see, how things are, and more tactical, not holistic, not very detailed, right? But analytics helps you to drive the strategy and alignment overall, right? So that's where the whole aspect about analytics will fall into picture. Uh, what matrix does, it helps you to share the what is the past and present, like what we saw earlier, right? But in case of analytics, it not only helps you with the past and present, but it also helps to predict the future, right? And we'll talk about how that happens and how am I going to use the data to predict the future, right? Um, it provides the counts and the rates, again, basic high output details, but here it provides the patterns and trends, right? So there is a difference between providing a counts and providing a pattern, as you also would know, right? If I can see a pattern and a trend where I'm seeing that there is a specific issue in a particular location, I can look at the trend, right? Whether it's employee satisfaction, employee attrition, performance of a particular department, I can make some sense out of that data and make some sense out of those trends, right? And last but not the least, this is more about informational. It gives me a dipstick of where am I, what is my HR, what is the health of my organization. But here it is more transformative, right? And I'll give you a couple of examples about why we call it to be more transformative and some of the predicts, right? So like we have seen, right, how organizations are using this to predict the future, right? For example, uh, as I was talking the earlier example, right, which is for employee attrition, right? How is this analytics going to help? That may be a question, right? I can understand you can show me the past data, you can show me the present data, but how am I able to predict the future to an extent, right? When I say predict means obviously it's within the realm of the things, right? Is based on the data and the patterns that you see. There is something called in the new technology, which is artificial intelligence. Many of you must have heard about this term at least, right? Which is being used, and machine learning, right? So what it does is, as a human, our mind is trained, right? If you take any HR organization, after many years, he or she will probably sense some patterns about how things will happen. What are the chances that the person may join the organization, what are the chances that the employee may quit an organization, right? Based on experience, right? Similarly, what happens is, there are algorithms, there are softwares, there are technology where you use machine to mimic what a human person does, right? The human brain does, right? And that is primarily based on data, right? At least from a human personality, it is based on your experience. Sometimes it is based on your gut feeling, and so on and so forth, right? And obviously the data as well. But in case of machine learning, that's what. So for example, um, how can I predict the potential attrition, right? Which is something that we just saw as an example, right? So if you see a recurring pattern, right, where a person is on the same role, right, for a long time, there is no career path. Based on his or her feedback on the survey, he or she has mentioned that there is a dip in the satisfaction or career path, right? If they see that the number of hours that the person is spending, especially in the pandemic now, every work-life balance obviously has gone for a toss, right? And there is a huge burnout, right? And there is still not a, so all the correlation of this data, right, whether it's the employee survey, the employee satisfaction, the role, the compensation, the amount of hours, is all put together in an algorithm, and you churn out something out of that to really predict, or really at least give a potential flag some of the employees which can. And that's where a lot of organizations, in large multinationals where I have worked with, and the client that I provide consulting, right, they use this data. And what has helped in a lot of organizations is based on this data, right, based on the potential. I'm just giving as an example, right? They are able to then talk to their managers, work with the team, and able to help a reduction. So there are many examples and use cases where organizations have used this predictive analytics, this people analytics, to really help save significant amount of money and help in attrition, right? And that's where I talked about where you being a strategic partner, right, and helping in the bottom line. So as you know, this is one example how the analytics has really helped the organization save significant cost, right? Because as you know, cost of hiring is significantly high than the cost of retention, plus the knowledge loss, the gaps that you get, and the learning curve, and so on and so forth, which is intangible, is there. So this is how many of the organizations are using this information to really help the organization and directly contribute to the top line and the bottom line, right? And if you have any questions, I can take it. I know it's a WebEx section and separate 15 minutes are allocated for that, but just wanted you to give and understand, because as you go along, you will also really need this information on how can I really use this information and how is this analytics going to help me to really add value, right? And truly be a strategic partner than just a personal department or an HR person. Okay. So now what is the process, right? How do I all this sounds great, right? But it is obviously easier said than done, right, when it comes to implementing it and completing the process cycle, right? So the first part is, I need to define when I start, let's say, the whole journey of analytics, right? Whether it's people analytics or HR analytics, right? What is my KPI, right? What are my key performance indicator that I want to measure? Okay, what are my top 5 problem statements that I have? Whether it's cost to hire, or time to hire, or employee attrition, or performance, or learning, and so on and so forth, right? So you define those key performance indicators at the start, right? Then you create the data selection process where you identify what is my data that I need to really churn, which I need, whether it's a talent sourcing data, or it's employee data, or it's employee well-being data, or whichever it is there, right? uh, then you start with the data cleansing, right? Because I think the key risk in the people analysis, as they say, is, right, you basically get what you allow, right? So in that sense, if your data is not correct, if your data is, for a lack of a better word, garbage, right, then you will have a similar outcome. So data cleansing is extremely important, right? Because it's you at the end of the day, machine is going to spit out what is based is already there as a part of which is the existing data, right? uh, uh, then the next part is the data analysis, right? Once you cleanse the data, you identify, you analyze the data very clearly based on what are the trends, what are the patterns, what are the things that you want to see, and then you have algorithms or the process to interpret the data and execute, with the example that I gave about a few minutes back about attrition and hiring and so on and so forth, right? So then you implement. So this is the at a high level the process, right? So whenever you want to start on the analytics journey, at a high level, this is what you will need to follow, right? See, I mean, what we have seen is 70 to 75%, and there are some numbers at the end in the deck also, right? That there is a lot of understanding that yes, I need analytics. Yes, I understand the importance of analytics and the whole ecosystem around it, right? But hardly 30 to 40% organizations are successful in actually implementing it to the true sense. And the part of the problem is in the 5-step process, or in the whole chain that you are seeing, there is a gap somewhere, right? Either the data selection is not correct, or the data is not clean, or so and so forth, right? So while you may have an aspiration to have a great analytics, but if you are not able to perform in the entire life cycle of the process, you will have some challenges in the risk, and this whole and you may not get the desired objective, basically, right? That's the point, right? Now, as you can seeing, right, the word analytics, right? People call it HR analytics. Some people call it people analytics. Some people call it workforce analytics. Some people call it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you can call it whatever, right? It is still a technology that is, or that is still evolving, right? At the end of the day, it is basically how you use it to your advantage, right? How you harness that data, how do you use it for coming up with a meaningful insights, and how you can measure the performance of your organization and how it makes an impact, right, based on the data, right? Because as I said, right, workforce analytics typically deals with, obviously, as the word says, workforce, right? So it deals with your employees, right? Whether it's employees well-being, or training, or performance, and so on and so forth, right? If you look at the people analytics, it will be the larger ecosystem which is above and beyond the employees, which will also becomes your contingent workers, your aspirants, right, who are your talent who still not joined the organizations, and applicants, right? So again, I think the word, don't get too much confused by the word. As I said, people use interchangeably. As long as you understand the difference between the matrix and analytics, I think that's important, right? Whether you call it people analytics, workforce analytics, talent, I think it's again based on what convenience and flavor that you want to have, right? So these are some of the workforce analytics or analytics pillar set, which I just talked about. I won't go into the details on each and every, but essentially at a high level, these are what most of the industry standards organizations typically comply with, right, or embrace to, right? Which starts with workforce planning analytics. How do I manage my workforce, the work-life balance? Similarly, the whole concept about the whole talent, right, including the sourcing, because again, for many of the industries, talent acquisition and talent sourcing and talent onboarding is extremely important, right? Especially in the service industry or any industry for that matter, right? For every day the talent is delayed, some of the industries you basically there is a direct or indirect impact to the organizations in terms of their top line or bottom line, right? So there is a lot of focus on talent acquisition analytics, right? And the example that I gave about attrition, right? There are a lot of analytics where recruiters are now able to predict what is the probability of this person joining, right? Based on, again, I won't go into the details of the technology part of it, but based on the data, the machine learning, the AI algorithms, right? Recruiters can now predict what is the probability of the person joining. Again, there are based on the job description match, based on the salary expectations, based on many other things that are there. But and they are able to focus on the people where they see the maximum percentage, and hence they're able to acquire the talent more quickly, right? Or more accelerate the whole talent acquisition process. So this is another example of where analytics is used even before the person joins an organization, right? And directly impacting the company's top line or the bottom line, again, by if you're able to hire faster, quicker, and more importantly, quality clients, right? Quality employees, right? With the right talent and skill set, that is going to be impacted. Similarly, how I can quickly do the onboarding, right? With the advent of COVID, I think the whole focus, we talked about attrition also some time back, attrition, retention, and performance, employee well-being, right? Nowadays a lot of organizations, especially in the last 2 years that we have seen, and a lot of clients have come back to us asking us to really get a view on what is the impact of COVID in terms of the productivity, right? What is the impact on the outcome of certain projects based on the remote working, and so on and so forth, right? So there is a huge amount of focus on that. Similarly, there is a, I mean, because of the situation, right, there is a significant focus on the employee well-being, the health, not only about the employee, but the extended, ecosystem as well, right? Because obviously the employees will not be able to function if he or she is not healthy, or somebody from his family is unwell, right? So there's a lot of focus on that in terms of policies, but that has also translated into how can I convert this into the analytics that I'm looking for, right? So so that's how the analytics pillar is there. Now, sometime back, I mean, I won't go into the details of this because I know it is, I don't want to get it too technical and scare you off. But at a high level, which any layman can understand, I wanted to give you how does this whole thing happen, right? At a high level, right? This is more of a logical depiction. I won't go into the protocol, the technology, and the algorithms and all those things behind. But typically, how do I get the data from multiple sources, right? As I was talking, right? How do you really get the churn out of it? So today you have typically the backend systems. It can be multiple systems, right? For sales, HR, finance, so on and so forth, right? So you extract the data out of that. You basically hold them into a staging area, right? Then you transform and load and create into the data warehouse is what we call it. Typically, you have the warehouses for cars and garages and things like that, right? So this is nothing but a warehouse for a data, where all the data from multiple sources are housed, archived, and more importantly, it is curated, right? Because as I said, if you don't have the right data, it will give you wrong results, right? If you have incorrect data, obviously you'll have incorrect dynamics in it. Your strategy will go for a toss, right? So it's extremely important to transform the data, curate the data, and cleanse the data, right? That we talked about earlier, right? And use that data. And once you do that, that's where you can then get various algorithms, routines, and there are some tools and technologies which we will see that are really used to create that analytics. So what happens is then you don't have to run after multiple systems, right? I don't have to have a separate data. I created data for HR, but I don't have his or her payroll information. I need to go to finance. If I need to see the productivity, the results, and I don't have the access to the sales, right? I have to run after sales. So all that has now come into one single system where you have a complete data of the entire data lake or data warehouse, as we call it, which is there, so that you don't have to go to multiple systems to get the data, and it's all harnessed in one. And then you can use the power of various engines and tools and technologies to really make some analytics out of it, right? So this is what it is. This is very specific to HR analytics, right? If I want to go to that, right? So I can get the data if I have to like HR systems, right? Where I can take the data from performance, attrition, recruitment, put into the analytics tool, and then have a layer which is I talked about uh, the machine learning or an artificial intelligence layer on top of it for doing various predicting, right? Predicting turnover, recruitment, interventions, and so on and so forth. So the one that you're seeing in the middle, right, which is the be it Hadoop or Power BI or Python, Tableau. Again, just right now, just keep the names. I don't think you are expected to know any of the details around it, but just so that you know that these are the some of the tools and technologies that is used or that is relevant today in having this, right? So Hadoop is another technology, right? So today another example, just slightly out of HR, right? If you have to buy a phone and you search in the Google about the latest phone, whichever that you want, right? You would have seen that after a few days, you would suddenly start getting some emails about phone and the discounts and the campaigns and things like that, right? Or if you log on to your, social media, be it LinkedIn, Facebook, or whatever it is there, right? Insta, you will suddenly start getting some ads about the phone. I'm just giving as an example of a phone. It can be anything, a car or any other thing, right? How is this happening? Right, because you have so much of data. So this is something called, there is something called a big data, right? So big data is something that the likes of the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world, where they have trillions and trillions of data, that the unstructured data that they get using obviously what is the search that they do or which page if you go on for a while. So all this is analytics. All the targeted campaign that you see is all analytics, right? And this is how Google and Facebooks are, obviously becoming more profitable and making more money, because because a lot of organizations are going to Google and Facebooks to really advertise their products or start their campaign, because they have the data and they have the capability to harness that data, churn that data, curate that data, and actually go a targeted audience for whatever that they need, right? So this is again extreme power, which we all are the recipient today, right? As a consumer, right? Where whatever that we do today on the social media is being can potentially be tracked, can potentially be used and used for, obviously they follow the security protocol and the compliance and the governance, but within the realm of what they can do to really make an impact. And organizations are making significant, there are a lot of organizations who are only thriving on this, right? And as I said, Facebook, Google are primary example of that, where biggest monetization of that organization is based on what you are able to push as a product, right? Targeted persona based targeting, that is completely possible only because of analytics, right? You must be covering how much there are again tools, technologies which actually, as I said, get this data, and there are things, but again at this point of time we don't need to go to the technology part of it, but just wanted to share that at a high level this is how the power of the analytics is, right? Now, what are the trends that we are seeing in the industry today, right? So the industry trends are, most of the people, especially many of the millennials, right? The experience is one part, right? Which obviously how, everything should be mobile. My onboarding should be on a bot or on a mobile. I need to have a chat bot. So all experience is the most thing that HR is seeing today, right? Employee, if the experience is not good, whether it's your onboarding or even before you hire, right? How do I really, what is my experience, when I start with my recruiting, right? Till I join or I onboard or learning and so on and so forth, right? All those things is that, right? The second biggest trend that we have seen, and this is all the leading analysts, and whether it's Gartner's or Deloitte's or Forrester's or IDC's of the world, they are seeing people analytics as the second best in 2020. Right, whether it's you're hiring the candidates, whether it's retaining, whether it's employee engagement, whether it's everything, analytics is there, right? So majority of the people are willing to invest in analytics, right? And there is a complete unanimity about how from the CHROs, right, about how do I include and the data analytics is a part of their strategy and really add value, right? So the recent survey by PwC said 50% of the sales currently that they currently use data analytics and keep it for the and find to keep it for the right people. And so this is again a trend, especially for all of you, who may be aspirant in future, joining organizations in whichever role capacity that you do. This is something extremely an integral part of your day in the life that is going to stay. So that's the reason it's extremely important for you to understand the power, the reason of the analytics, the importance, and how it is going to really make an impact, right? Just a small trend about how, what is the global trends, right, when it comes to people analytics, right? And what do people say? So thankfully, I mean, India is one of those countries where they've realized the importance and the power of analytics. Again, this is survey done by Deloitte, which is in a public domain. But majority of the organization, right, except maybe France and maybe a couple of them, 75% of the leading economies of the world feel that that is important, and hence it is extremely important for you to really understand. And you can do obviously more research, but I think the more early you understand about it, the more successful you will be in your organization, wherever you join, or whatever role that you contribute. Because as I said, it's there in all walks of the life, right? Not just as an HR, but whichever you go, analytics is extremely important in whatever thing that you do today. Okay. uh, Last slide, I'll just conclude, I know we've just about the time. Is what is the benefits, right? I think we spoke about it, right, again and again. It helps to hire the right person at the right place at the right time, right? That's the key thing, and that's the mantra, right? So with analytics, you're able to do that, right? You improve your talent acquisition, and also more importantly, retention, right? What good is it when you spend huge amount of time and effort to get the best talent, but that talent quits in 6 months or 1 year, right? And you have to start all over again. So you can use that for that to understand, the satisfaction score, the employees index, the employee pulse, and so on and so forth with this, right? Again, with case real employee, employee experiences, right? Again, with analytics, you are able to show and drill down so much of things that you can do, and help to get the positive experience that we talked about, right? Identify the skills gaps, right? Again, whichever industry you are, whether it's a manufacturing or finance or sales or retail, right? You can use this to identify the gap, the analytics, and again contribute to my earlier point, to the bottom line or the top line of the organization, right? Because that's where the organization is need. Okay, I need talented engineers, right? Or I need the salesperson, best salesperson, or I need whatever it is that is required for my job, right? Depending on what the business I am, right? With analytics, you are able to identify the gaps and help in that, right? You are able to increase the productivity, again, provide the financial insights, about the organization. Where are you making more profit? Which is the area where you need to focus on? What is the product that is in the market? What is the competitive view? So on and so forth that you do, right? So all these aspects that you see are going to be important, whether it's again, efficiencies, improving performance, and reduce the workforce misconduct also, right? You're able to implement the policies. You're able to get some of the interventions from HR that is there using people analytics, right? So at a high level, this is what I had to cover. I mean, this is what I had in mind to cover. I know I rushed through some of the slides. It would have been helpful if I was there, but I hope this was helpful, and I know we have some 10-15 minutes for questions, so I'll be open for taking any questions if you have.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a great pleasure listening to you. Also, we have a few questions from the audience.
Sure.
Thank you, sir, for explaining the topic with so much clarity and ease. My question is just out of curiosity because we are living in a business environment that is very dynamic and ever changing. So, will it ever be possible for us to 100% rely on the machine data to help us in the workflow of the organization?
No, no, the answer is not 100%. See, machine software analytics is an enabler, right? What a human cannot do is, which is where you deploy machines or softwares, right? But at the end of the day, can I make it 100% foolproof like a bots? In some areas maybe, right? But at the end of the day, it is the human intelligence. How do you interpret the data, right? How do you use the data? How do you get the insights to take some decision? Because especially in the HR, right, there is a lot of soft angle to it, there is a lot of subjectivities also. So the point is, whichever you are not able to get within just a standard reporting, that's where you can use. But is it going to be 100%? I don't think so, right? And as I said, in some cases where it is completely automated, you can push certain things, but at the end of the day, you will require some bit of human. But obviously, the whole point is, as I said, if it's a structured, if it's curated, if the data quality is good, then a lot of these things become easier for any person to really make a data-driven decision making, right? You are not trying to eliminate the HR or eliminate the human part of it, right? But we are going to, the whole idea is to empower that person to use that data and drive the decisions based on the data, not based on just an experience or subjectivity. That's my take on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
So next question, are there any technical courses or skills that I need to learn in order to do something related to human analytics in my future career? And if yes, what are the potential for these courses or skills?
Yeah, so as it depends on when you ask the question what, right? So if you want to be a person who wants to, be the architect or a technology person to really get into the nitty-gritty of creating this data, yes, there are courses, whether it's an Oracle, BI, Hadoop, and there are a lot of courses, business intelligence, which you can see in the market, right? If you can Google, you will get it, right? About how do I really use this technology, right? But if you if the so that is one part, right? There are a lot of tools and technologies. As I said, it is more for BI analytics is one, Python is one. If you want to be, really be have a career in creating something like a people analytics or that, right? Hadoop, as I mentioned, and so and so. Oracle is one another good platform that you can do. But I think it depends. If you are a business person, if you're going to be an HR person, right? I think the key is, as I told you earlier, is to formulate what are my KPIs that I need to track, right? So there are two ways, right? One is the business side of the house, other is the technology side of the house, right? Depends on what question you have, right? If it is the technology side of the house, then obviously there are technology courses which I talked about. I gave some examples and it was there in my slide, and I can pull it up for you if you want to, where you can look at these, right? Studio, Hadoop, Power BI, Python, Tableau, right? All these are the technical tools, and there are courses within the market that you can go with, right? But if you are the business side of the house, then I think this is where you need to be focusing on, right? This is where you need to understand and how do I get this right? Because again, the sometimes too much of data and too much of unstructured data or data that is not going to can also confuse, right? So it's extremely important to do that. So if you're on the business side of the house, then there are certain things where you can, it's more about your HR, right? And how you manage your HR functions. What are the, as I said, the more KPIs that you want to do for organization and so on and so forth. And that's how you can use that information to create some value.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, last question. You spoke about predictive decision making under HR analytics, which will require a level of skill, technology, and investment that many organizations do not have yet. So, do you think human beings can be unpredictable and have different personalities and backgrounds, which could be chances where things could be going other side, like any instances?
Sorry, if you can repeat the question, I was not able to understand. So you are saying that a lot of organizations may not be able to adopt or incubate this because this requires a lot of investment, right? Is
Yes,
that
sir,
the question?
exactly. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So I think fair point. See, there are a lot of organizations who do this as a service. So there is something which I didn't cover, something called a DaaS, data as a service, right? So what you do is you don't have to invest in the technology, you don't have to invest in infrastructure, but you can have the data, obviously with the security compliance and all those things, right? Where you can actually hire those companies, or there are a lot of organizations which will just expect the data from you in a certain format. Let's say if you have some system, I'm assuming there will be some system in some shape or form, if not at least Excel, right? The worst case, right? Obviously they can use that data and provide that as a service. So they can use the data and then work with you to provide, as I talk to you about the KPIs, the dashboards, the analytics that you want, and they can do it for you. Even I know there are a lot of organizations who do that, which provides data as a service, right? So you don't need to invest technically if that is the concern that you have in terms of the infrastructure or the technology, because there are companies who will do it for you without having you to invest in this and still get what you want.
Thank you, sir, for this lovely session. It was extremely insightful and interesting to understand how analytics can make human capital a success. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, and I hope this was helpful. Again, feel free to let me know if you have any questions. You can drop me the email also. I think you can get the number from Tejaswini and others.
Yes, sir,
But
sure.
yeah, so good luck for your future.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I would now like to announce that we'll have a 10 minutes break. So quickly grab your snacks and make sure to be back by 12:40.
Welcome back. A few instructions before we begin. Attendees should fill out the feedback form. The link for the same will be posted later in the Q&A box. Please note, certificates will be awarded only to participants who have attended both the sessions and duly filled out the feedback form for both the days. Thank you. My name is Jyotsna, and let us begin again with our last speaker for the day. On behalf of Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce, I would like to introduce Ms. Shweta Raina. Shweta is the founder and CEO of Telerang with the mission to create a work-ready India. Telerang has reached close to 30 million students since inception in 2013 with 500,000 plus learners. Before starting her entrepreneurial journey, she has worked with McKinsey and Company, New York, and was a director with Teach for India. She has been recognized as a rising women leader by Economic Times, facilitated for the Young Womenpreneur Award by DICE, Design, Innovation and Creativity-led Entrepreneurship Ecosystem, and Governor of Maharashtra. A Woman of Courage by India Today, and the Women Achiever Award by the Women Economic Forum. She has written a weekly column on student issues for India's most widely circulated paper, Dainik Bhaskar. She has been a speaker at the Harvard India Conference, United Nations Young Changemakers, and the Women Economic Forum. Also a TEDx speaker, which I remember listening to, where she spoke on Cook Up Your Career. Shweta is a graduate of Harvard Business School, where she graduated with honors, top 15% of a graduating class, and the Horace Goldsmith Fellowship for Social Enterprise. She led an independent research project under the guidance of Professor Narayan Das to find a solution to India's employability crisis, which grew into Telerang. Her pilots were funded by a grant from Harvard's Social Enterprise Initiative. She also graduated magna cum laude from Brown University in Applied Mathematics, International Studies, and Economics. Apart from her professional role as the CEO of Telerang, Shweta is involved with the Raina Education Trust, is a fitness enthusiast, and enjoys spending time with family and friends. She is a prolific writer and podcaster. Beyond education, she has a keen interest in health and wellness sector, trendspotting, and future of work. Ma'am, we are extremely delighted to have you here amongst us to share your viewpoints. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And since you've already given me a very detailed introduction, I think we can keep the introduction from our side pretty short. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you all see me, hear me, all of that?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Great. So we have a small video which I'd like to start with, just so that everyone gets an idea about what I do and what really, is my vision. And then we can get started. Does that work? Okay, wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know. I don't have any experience.
No, I'm not ready for a job because I don't think I'm ready to face the outside world as yet. We're still really young.
Yeah, easily. I'll get a job.
I think I want to study more and explore my opportunities more before I decide what work I want to do.
I think I'm ready for the job as I've learned enough in that course.
No, I don't think I'm ready for the job.
No, I'm not.
Provide an international curriculum based on Harvard Business School case studies, and our guest speakers and mentors come from diverse backgrounds from top organizations.
We are building a community of young leaders who have access to our Young Leaders Panel, senior panel, and have access to 1,000+ alumni network across the world.
I think what makes our internships different is that they are supported, structured, specific to your skill track, and paid.
I applied to the Talrang program to gain insight into professional networking, resume building, interviewing skills. I feel the program truly made me work ready and really taught us about corporate culture, grooming, and helped me acclimatize to the corporate culture. I really enjoyed the lectures. It was very engaging, interactive. We had Harvard business case studies. I really enjoyed the module on time management and problem solving, and it was truly a great experience.
Benjamin Franklin once said that by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Usually, people jump off the cliff and are forced to grow their wings on their way down. But Talrang, it gave me the opportunity to grow my wings while I was still up there. Thank you, Talrang.
Awesome. So now you have an idea about my research project, what I work on. So we can get right to the job market and what is it that the future really holds for all of you who are in college today, for all of you who are about to graduate, what's really going to change. So if you really think about the college experience, that's where the transformation has begun. And that is actually what's changing dramatically even today. So 5 years ago or 10 years ago, the college experience was really about attending the canteen and having fun with your friends over lunch, going out with your friends for coffee. So I don't think people really studied much, right? It was more about the fun that you had, the events that you attended, the TEDx talks that you attended, and very little was actually about the academic experience. The facilitators, the faculty that came to your campus, those were the only faculty that you had access to. But now, of course, with digital transformation, the entire college experience has been disrupted completely. So what are the 4 main areas where colleges have transformed? If we really think about it, it's been on 4 parallel areas that there have been major changes, major transformations. The first one is, if you click forward, is around diversity and inclusion. So now a lot of people who couldn't attend college, maybe they were really far away from college, maybe they were people who were married and they never ended up going to college, and now they have children, so they don't feel that they can actually attend college anymore. Those people have access to the college experience. People who couldn't afford college, now with digital colleges being available, they can actually attend and they can actually make that possible for them. A college degree has become a reality for people who earlier maybe couldn't make it to a physical college and couldn't afford it. There are many free universities as well that are offering degrees online, especially globally, which has made it possible for people to get certified and educated in different ways. The second thing is innovation. So our college education system, with all due respect, is completely stagnated and hasn't really changed a lot in the last, 100 years, I would say, right? The same things that we probably learned in school is what our parents learned and what our grandparents learned in school. I don't think that the curriculum has changed by even 1 page, whether it's math or science or even the languages and the way that we learn them, whether it's art, whether it's theater, right? The way that our curriculum is structured is quite archaic. Of course, some of the private universities which have access, to better infrastructure, better quality facilitators, they have that privilege to improve their curriculum. But the rest of our country hasn't really made those changes. But with online education, they have been forced to innovate. And that ability for a college to really think outside the box in terms of how they teach, whether it's even something as simple as showing a video, which I remember going to campuses across India and saying, I would like to show a video to the students as opposed to just giving them a lecture. And the response would be, we don't have that infrastructure, we can't do that. Now all those colleges have been forced to use Zoom and other platforms to actually teach. So as a result, there's been a lot of innovation using technology, and there's also been a lot of innovation in terms of how we can have interdisciplinary education. So students can take multiple subjects, different kinds of courses in addition to their academic course load, because they can take different upskilling programs, different other areas that interest them online. So there's been a lot of innovation in the curriculum, in the way that colleges are thinking about the college experience. The third thing is upskilling and jobs. And this is, of course, the major area of transformation. So earlier, jobs were primarily in person. Now, as you all know, jobs have become largely virtual, whether it's internships or jobs. Colleges have seen that many students are actually interning alongside their colleges. So they are, of course, sometimes attending college, but the rest of the time, they're in internships. And as a result, students are a lot more relevant for industry than what they were pre-pandemic. With this digital disruption, candidates are working, I would say, most of the day. At least what we've seen is that they attend college for a few hours a day, and the rest of the time they're attending part-time internships. And also companies that wouldn't want to come to campus are now able to recruit those students online and even have them intern anytime, anywhere. So there's been a huge transformation in upskilling. There's been a huge transformation in jobs. A lot of edtech players have come onto the scene. The edtech industry is now worth billions of dollars. Some of the largest tech companies in the world today are in the sector of education. So the way that education has transformed has gone hand in hand with the way that the job market has transformed when it comes to upskilling. And then the last thing is partnerships and synergies. So back in the day, colleges were in silos. They were not really working together. They were not really working with the private sector. They were not really working with corporates, because they felt that, okay, we know the academic part best, and that's what we need to focus on, right? Why do we need to get distracted with all these corporates and the private sector? And that sector is bad, right? The academic sector is good, and the private sector is bad because they only want to make money. So there was this whole impression that, okay, if a private company is coming to campus, then they must be having some wrong intention. They're just coming for money reasons. But now that's actually changed a lot. And colleges have realized that if they need to grow their students and eventually get them jobs, they need to partner with industry. They need to partner with the private sector, whether it's private companies, whether it's different kinds of organizations that can actually support their students, who understand what is it that industry is really looking for. So this kind of thinking, this 1 + 1 = 3, this kind of partnership mindset, growth mindset, synergy mindset is something that's definitely come into the college experience. And I think even conferences like this one, where different speakers are coming in to mentor students across sectors, are really important, so that students open their minds beyond their books and they really realize what's happening in the real world. So the digital disruption has, I'm using the word enhance here, it's really enhanced the college experience for several reasons. And I think the more that we embrace change rather than trying to fight change, the better it is for everyone. We have to work together as opposed to working in silos, and that's the only way that students ultimately can benefit. So that's a little bit about the digital disruption. And we also have Aishwarya with us today from the Talent team. So Aishwarya, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Thanks, Shweta. So hi guys, I'm Aishwarya. I'm the Director of Student Engagement at Talent, and I will be supporting the session along with Shweta for today.
Awesome. So Aishwarya was an engineer who then got into Talent. So it's a very different journey, and maybe at the end, Aishwarya, you can share a little bit about your experience as well.
Oh, sure.
Great. So let's move forward. So as you think about what is the right job for you, right, as all of you are graduating, there are many jobs that are so-called aspirational jobs, whether it's consulting, whether it's investment banking, whether it's startups, finance. A lot of students come to me and they say that, you know what, my parents have told me that I have to do finance, or my teachers told me that working in a startup is not good because I don't know what's going to happen to that startup tomorrow. So there are lots of notions, a lot of misconceptions. Only big companies are good, startups are not good, or some students feel only startups are good, big companies are not good. So a lot of these myths, and there's a lot of things that seem aspirational to us, but ultimately it is really about where you fit in and what is the right fit for you. So some of the words up here are jobs which are exciting, which are attractive, where there is a lot of hiring happening today. But that doesn't mean that you only need to go in for these specific organizations. Instead of that, what we would recommend is you really look for what are your core competencies? What are the skills that you bring to the table? And this doesn't matter whether it's 2010, whether it's 2020 or 2030. What really matters is what is the right role and the right fit for you. So, for example, if you're an economics student, when you join an organization, unfortunately, there is no economics department. So everything that you've studied needs to be adjusted to the organization in terms of where can you actually apply yourself. So you need to go back to your economics degree and look at, okay, what did I really learn? Did I learn academics? Did I learn analytics? Did I learn research? Did I learn quantitative statistics? What did I learn? And how can that be used in this company? And which department do I fit into? So that is the key to you actually getting placed, is figuring out how does your academic degree really map to your core competencies and then ultimately to your jobs of the future. So if we click forward, these are a few areas that companies specifically look for in terms of skills today. Someone who can communicate. Soft skills is becoming very important. Someone who understands sales. Sales is very exciting, and a lot of people say that sales is a bad profession. I don't want to do sales. It's looked down upon. Sales is what ultimately runs a company. The revenue part is the most important part of the company. Salespeople are usually the best paid people in an organization. So if anyone has told you that sales is bad, please tell them that is absolutely wrong. And sales is a very respected and a very important profession. And if we don't have good salespeople in our country, the economy can't grow. So we need salespeople in industry. We need people who can do analytics, who really understand data science. Just knowing math is not analytics. Those are two very different things. So if you're good at mathematics, that doesn't mean that you're going to be great at analytics. How does your mathematics actually translate to analytics? And how can you be useful in an organization? So these are just some examples on the slide. App development, coding. A lot of people come to companies saying that, hey, I want to code. But what languages do they actually know? None. So most colleges, even if they're giving out a computer science degree, that degree is just on paper. In reality, the candidate cannot add value to a company because they don't actually know any relevant coding languages. And this is something that students are struggling with day in and day out. So it's very important that in addition to your academic degree, you have certain skills. Any of the skills on this slide you can pick from, at least 2 or 3 of them, where you are exemplary and where you can actually come into a company and add significant value. And the company should want to hire you because you come in with the right skills, not because you think that job is exciting, but because you're actually able to add value in the relevant area. These are some broader career tracks. So once you figure out, okay, these are the skills that I can add value in, you can actually look at which area do I want to get into. Do I want to take my coding skills and work in the hospitality domain? Or do I want to take my marketing skills and work in a hospital? So these are the career tracks, which are broader careers, industries that you can go into. But even then, like I said earlier, you really need to come in with the right set of skills that you will be bringing to the table. If there is any facility for students to ask questions, you can feel free to do so. I'm now going to give you some examples of students who have actually walked the talk. So these are people who are doing very cool jobs, really studied hard in college, but more than that, did lots of internships, got a lot of practical experience, built their skills, and today are young leaders across sectors. People you can reach out to if you like on LinkedIn and get mentored from hearing their journeys. So this is Digvijay. He actually came in to Talleyrand in his first or second year at Christ University. He did his first internship in venture capital at a place called Eros Labs because he really wanted to try finance. Then he said, I want to try my hand at research. So he did his next internship at Harvard Business School's India Research Center. He did exceptionally well in both these internships and then decided that he wanted to go into a full-time career, not in finance, not in research, but in marketing. So he joined Harvard Business Review as a marketing specialist and then eventually joined a London-based publication called Journey as their head of growth in India. And he is, I would say, barely 25. So very interesting journey of someone who really explored in college, wasn't set that, okay, I only want to do finance, I only want to do research, was open to trying different things, and ultimately realized that new media is something that he was passionate about. Another story is Mridul Agarwal, who was always very passionate about the hospitality sector as a career. And then within that, he knew that his skill set was really in communications and marketing. So he interned with a hospitality brand called K Hospitality, and he did everything from cleaning tables to deciding menus to helping the restaurant market themselves, and eventually went on to Swiggy, where he is a brand development manager at Swiggy and really works on helping the brand grow. He's someone who, when he wanted to enter the hospitality sector, there was hardly any food tech, right? It was just about working in restaurants, working in those kinds of jobs. And he knew that it may not be so glamorous. But today he's lucked out and is in one of the most glamorous companies. Uh, it's a unicorn as well, and it's doing exceptionally well, especially in the pandemic. So I think his story is also one, to look at, and you can always reach out to any of these people, like I said, on LinkedIn and hear directly from them as to how they did this. The next one is slightly different, someone in a more traditional job at HSBC. So he went in initially as a strategy intern at Godrej. Then he worked at Talleyrand in finance and strategy, and then decided that he wanted to go to the US and get a master's there, and eventually ended up at HSBC where he currently is. So while there are cool companies, you can also look at something which is a little more traditional. I would say the banking sector is no longer as glamorous as it used to be. It's no longer considered as cool, as exciting, but it definitely has its rewards. The financial sector is one of the highest paying sectors still. And while the work is sometimes a little monotonous, the rewards are definitely quite high compared to other industries. So definitely something to look at. This is Tanya. She's the CEO at Papa Don't Preach, which is a designer brand. She interned at Condé Nast in a magazine, and was always more on the creative side, and is now working in the design space and doing exceptionally well. Now, Yash's story is very different. He actually came in wanting to do strategy, interned at a venture capital firm, then ended up at McKinsey Bombay, eventually McKinsey New York, and is now working in EdTech at Scalar Academy as a vice president. And he was actually one of the first alumni of Talleyrand. So all stories, right? What do they really tell you? They tell you that your career is ultimately a journey. And as long as you can figure out what is your skill track, where is it that you can add value, you might change companies, you might change countries, but as long as you have an area where you are adding value, you know what is it that you're bringing to the table, you will be in demand. Last but not least, this is Akriti. She is a digital manager at Accenture in London today. And what's really exceptional about Akriti is that she was, very, very clear that marketing was her forte. And when she went to London, at that time, there was Brexit. It was difficult for people to get jobs, but she fought it out in a tough economy and was one of the only international students in her year to actually get a full-time placement after her master's in London. So in addition to the skills, that grit, that resilience is also really important in the jobs of the future because there is a lot of competition. Now we're going to show a short video again, and I want you guys to look at the slides that are coming up. There are 2 slides for every skill that I talked about in the beginning. And I want you to see if you can spot the difference between the 2 slides. So the first slide for a specific skill track is pre-pandemic, and the second slide is post-pandemic. Okay, so it's a small game. It's just gonna take 2 minutes, and we're gonna show this video. I want you guys to see if you can spot the difference between what people did in these skill tracks before the pandemic and after the pandemic. Awesome. Thanks so much, Aishwarya, for showing us that video. So if anyone could spot the differences, what jobs look like before pandemic versus what they look like now, um, it's really hard, right? When you look at what people were doing before and after to really see what's changed. The roles looked quite similar. The main difference is, of course, the adoption of technology. So most roles have become more tech heavy. And if a job can be eliminated using technology, companies are choosing to go that route. So if there is a software that can do your job, if there is something that can do it better than what you're doing manually, that is where companies are going. And they're actually leveraging talent more for sales more for communication heavy roles like marketing. They're leveraging talent for things which are like app development, coding. I would say analytics, yes, but more to use technology, more to use software as opposed to actually crunching data. Like what we used to do at McKinsey, we would get a lot of data and we had to manually handle it. Whereas now there are many tools and technologies that will do that for you, like a Tableau, right? It can make beautiful slides, it can make beautiful graphs for you, which otherwise people would do manually earlier. So it's definitely going towards a world where you need to if we click forward, you need to pick your skill track from the 14 skill tracks that we showed you and decide which is the one that you want to focus on so that you can build your career forward. You also need to start networking. Networking is becoming increasingly important, how you build connections with others in a way that is not transactional. So it shouldn't be that, okay, when you need something, you call your mentor, and then when you're done, then you forget that they even exist, right? The idea should be that you build a good relationship with people so that you can also support them and they can also support you. And of course, update your profile, make sure that you are visible, make sure that you are doing whatever is required so that people notice your existence in the job market. We talked a little bit about resilience when we were talking about Akriti's story. Now, what's really important here is that you firstly know what is it that you want. If you don't have a vision, it's difficult to be resilient because you feel like, why am I even working towards something, right? If I don't have a purpose. The second thing is composure. How do you actually stay in control? And that's, of course, challenging right now. And there's a pandemic going on. There's so much stress throughout. But this is something that we can definitely strive for. The third is having the ability to actually reason. If we don't have problem solving skills, it becomes difficult for us to handle a problem because we don't know how to break it down and actually solve it. Then there's health. How do we actually maintain ourselves so that we have energy? If you're always exhausted, you're not well fed, you're not well rested, you've not slept enough, it'll be difficult for you to actually be healthy enough to work hard. Then there's tenacity. Do you have the ability to handle times when things are not going so well? Sometimes you need to be optimistic. You need to be able to bounce back. And lastly, collaboration. Can you work with others? Do you have that support? So these 6 different domains together can make you a resilient employee or even a resilient leader or a CEO in the future. The last thing is rediscovery and reflection. There's a tool called Ikigai, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. Definitely make your Ikigai. Think about what is it that really defines you. What is your purpose? What is it that you can actually be paid for? And then link that back to the 14 skill tracks that we talked about and use that to figure out your career journey forward. The last thing is, if it doesn't work out, it's never too late. So if you do remember the stories that we shared, many of those people had tried one thing and then decided to go for something completely different. Maybe there was a new industry that came up when Digvijay started working. Venture capital was, very attractive. But today the media industry maybe is more exciting for him. So he decided to switch tracks. So be ready to reinvent yourself. Keeping yourself updated is very, very important because we're talking about 2030 and we're only in 2022. So now we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the future holds. So it's very important that you are constantly updating yourself and staying relevant as well. So with that, I think we come to an end as to what is it that the future of jobs will really look like. I'm going to now hand over to Aishwarya to share a little bit about her journey. And also, if you'd like to stay engaged with us, how is it that you can do so?
Thanks a lot, Shweta. So like Shweta mentioned, I actually started off as an engineer. I graduated as a mechanical engineer from the University of Strathclyde, and post that, like Shweta mentioned as well, I wanted to go down the traditional route. So I initially worked at Cummins, which, if you don't know, is a manufacturing company, and we manufacture engines. And I specifically was involved in their remanufacturing division. So it was quite exciting. I was working at the floor shop. And even though I learned a lot out there in terms of how we apply our hard skills, what I really kind of took away from that journey as well was how my managers specifically told me that it's the softer skills that really come into play for the growth at any organization. So post my engineering, I came back to India, and I wanted to get into the same domain at the end of the day as well. But a lot of manufacturing companies don't want to hire women to work on their floor shop. So that was another change. So I had to reinvent myself. I had to sit down and look at, okay, what are the strengths that I have and what can I bring to the table? And that's specifically why I kind of switched my job roles. So I worked initially for a couple of years to help small-time farmers become more sustainable. And once I kind of figured out that, I reached my limit with the tech side of things and to apply my degree, I started exploring much further. So I initially was working, in business development and marketing with this company called Hood and Reports, which is a lot like Forbes. But again, I reflected back in terms of my ikigai, and I realized that I do really well if I connect with a vision. So that's when I found out about Talorang, and I researched a bit about Shweta and her journey. And I thought it was quite interesting, and it fit with a lot of values that I hold. So yeah, I applied, and here we are 2 years down the line. So I think what you can really learn from my journey as well is how you must constantly kind of adapt at the end of the day and constantly reinvent yourself. And that's really what's going to help you out in the future. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's exactly those particular things as well. And like Shweta mentioned, if you do want to stay engaged with us, we have a series of programs that we run as well, and competitions, starting off with the Future CEOs program, which what our alumni have graduated from, like Digvijay and Yash and Akriti and Mritul. And that's how we help our students discover what those 14 things are, what skill track you're good at, and then we can place you. And similarly, we run harder skill courses like our certificate courses as well. So that's a bit about what we do and a bit about my journey. But I'll hand it over back to Shweta for any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you, ma'am, for a lovely session. It was extremely insightful and interesting. And we can move forward to the Q&A session.
Sure.
Good afternoon, ma'am. The session was really insightful. I had a question. Like we are students in college right now, pursuing like the different degrees, and now we're thinking about what will hold more relevance in the corporate sector. Like we think about, some people are extremely ambitious that they want to go abroad and pursue their masters from a good university, and there are certain set of students who just want to build skills on the side. So what do you think are corporates really looking for? Do the colleges still hold as much relevance in today's day and age?
Some corporates still have their hiring criteria set on only a few colleges. But most corporates are open. And in fact, many companies actually come to Talorang. We have 400 corporate partners that we work with, ranging from Birla, Godrej, Mahindra, startups, MNCs. Most companies come to us saying that we just want someone who's hungry and someone who's willing to put in the hours and also who has the right attitude. So I think more than the college that you're attending, more than the fancy degrees that you have, it's really about the hunger that you bring to the table. And yes, of course, skills are more important than your degree. So even if you don't have a computer science degree, in fact, most coders that we hire don't have a computer science degree, but they are able to code. And that's what ultimately companies care about. So I would say skills is more important today than your degree. In fact, some of the larger MNCs today have even removed the requirement for someone to have a degree to join them, as long as they can do the work. It also becomes an equalizer because there are many people who can't afford to do a master's abroad, or they can't afford to take so many years to actually go and do their master's. They need to get into the workforce right out of college. So why should we only hire MBAs, right? We should start hiring freshers, and that's what is really the need of the hour. So I think as long as you have done enough internships and you have enough exposure, that should be good enough to get a good final placement.
Makes 100% sense, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Ma'am, we have another question. So you talked about how you have placed students, and we would like to know what skills and technical knowledge we need to develop upon so that we can also get placed.
Okay. So, like I said, a lot of these students were extremely self-motivated. So the most important thing is that fire needs to come from within. Yes, we have placed students, but those students actually ultimately placed themselves because they were so motivated, right? They were the ones who really put in that effort to complete all their assignments at Talirang, do all the extra homework and pre-work, actually reflect and think about what they want. So those were the ones who got the top jobs, the ones who were curious, who asked questions. So ultimately, the onus is not on the college. It's not on any third party to get you a job. It's not on your parents. It's not on your older sister or brother, to follow up and get that job done for you. Ultimately, you need to get yourself a job. And the best way to do that is to figure out what is the right job for you. Where do you really add value? What are you good at? We talked about the ikigai as well. If you're not good at something, no company will hire you for that particular thing, right? They're not going to invest in someone beyond a point because businesses have become more focused on profit, and they're not going to go out of their way to train someone. So ultimately, if you can join in as an intern when you're still in college, that's a good time to get that training, to get that mentorship and build skills in a particular domain. And then using those skills, you can go ahead and apply for your job. So what all these 7 or 8 stories that I showed you, what they did is they did multiple internships, and during those internships they were really well versed with what the organization wanted. They gave it their 110%, and so when the time came for full-time placements, they already had a job in hand even before placement season. Right out of those internships, they had gotten offered a full-time offer. So they didn't even need to stress about getting a job. That internship itself had converted into a job. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, ma'am. I completely understand your viewpoint that in today's day and age, we are supposed to take care of ourselves and get the job. But ma'am, for the viewers that are watching us, can you elaborate upon the actual skills that we need, specific
Absolutely.
skills?
So that's 3 things. First, you need to know yourself, right? That's the first step. What is it that you, like I said, bring to the table? The second thing is you need to prepare yourself both on hard skills and soft skills. And then the third thing is you need to know how to prove yourself in a company. So there are a lot of toppers who don't end up getting the top job. And that's because they know what they're good at. They know they have everything that is required, but they're not able to prove themselves during the interview process. They don't know how to make a good resume. They don't know how to network, make a good LinkedIn profile. So I think these 3 stages of knowing yourself, then ultimately preparing yourself with the hard and soft skills, and then proving yourself at your internship with the right ability to actually network, build connections, is sort of the formula, if that's what you're looking for, to get a job.
So ma'am, according to you, what could be some hard skills and soft skills that, for example, a BCom student need to prepare for?
So there were 14 skill areas that we talked about, whether it's communications, whether it's coding, whether it's design, whether it's sales. So from those 14 skills, you can pick any 2 or 3, and that should be enough to get you hired.
Okay,
So
thank you.
as a BCom student, whether you're a BCom student, you're an engineer, whether you're a liberal arts student, it doesn't matter. What matters is the skills that you bring to the table. Are you good at social media? Are you good at finance? What is it that really floats your boat? What are you excited about? And what are you good at? So use the Ikigai concept to really figure out which of these skills you can actually bring to the table. Thanks, Aishwarya, for sharing the slide. And we also showed a small video on this. I'm not sure if you saw that, but that actually showed these 14 skill tracks. So being able to choose 2 or 3 of them and then apply to an organization saying, you know what, I really am looking for something in sales. That's what's going to get you hired, as opposed to saying, I'm a BCom graduate. It's becoming more of a skills economy rather than like based on the degree that you've done. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, that completely makes sense. Thank you so much for answering.
Okay, great.
Ma'am, the last question for today.
Yeah.
What careers should we look forward to being undergraduate students?
Okay. So again, this is, I would say, really dependent on you, right? Whether you're an undergrad or a postgrad, it doesn't really matter. Companies are hiring for these 14 skill tracks, and you need to look at which is it that you are good at and then apply for that. If you feel like, okay, finance is something that I'm good at, the advantage of finance, like I said earlier, is that it's one of the highest paying sectors. If you're looking for something immediately and you're very driven by incentive, then sales is a good area to go into. And eventually, of course, you'd want to grow from an entry level resource to a manager, from a manager to a senior manager, then maybe a director, you know. So you should also look for growth opportunities within the organization as opposed to just like working for 6 months or 1 year as a fresher and then saying, okay, now I'm going to leave. Right? The goal should be that you should stay with the company for at least 2 to 3 years minimum, if not 5-10 years, so that you can actually build out a career, build out your network, and then ultimately be successful in the long run, as opposed to looking for sort of that short-term success. So that's the main advice that I would give if you're a fresher is you don't look for immediate gratification and hope for more money. Try to build a loyal sort of reputation as a loyal resource, someone who is a good human being in addition to being a good worker. And then anyone will recommend you forward for your master's or for another job as well if you're looking for that.
Right, yes, ma'am, that makes sense. Also, I was wondering that since you are so familiar with the corporate world and industry area, so what do you think is the demand right now? So, you know, students can shape themselves according to the demand.
The demand, like I said, is in the tech space. It's in the sales arena. It's definitely in social media and digital marketing. So these are 3 areas that we do get a lot of requests. You know, content or creative for social media, the ability to actually code or build apps. That whole space is definitely growing. Analytics also as a space is growing. So anything that incorporates technology is of course growing quickly. But I would not say that, see, companies ultimately need to build out all their departments, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing. So I think rather than looking at the market and only trying to adapt yourself, you should first start with what are you good at and then look for a job accordingly. So we really recommend that you should first know yourself, then prepare yourself, and lastly prove yourself, like I said earlier, as opposed to just chasing trends. Because if you just keep chasing trends, you're never going to be satisfied. Whereas if you know yourself and you know what you bring to the table, you'll be a long lasting employee and you'll be a satisfied employee.
Yes, ma'am, got it. And ma'am, like I am an accounts and finance student. So apart from these areas that you spoke about, what do you think will be the demand for a person who is into accounts and finance?
You can join in as a financial analyst, a strategy analyst. You can join into an investment bank or a consulting firm. You can even join a startup in their strategy team. You can join the Indian government and help them with their analysis. So we've seen strategy and finance roles across the board.
Yes, ma'am, got it. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Of course.
I would now like to call upon Gautam to present the closing note.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's about time we close the doors on a lively and stimulating webinar. It is my privilege to provide the closing remarks on the two-day national webinar on dynamism in the human market today and tomorrow, conducted by the Department of Commerce, Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce. This seminar has been an outstanding example. Our minds have been filled by a torrent of ideas, information, statistics, interpretation, and visions. There is indeed plenty to reflect upon, and we have had an amazing and fruitful discussion over past 2 days. We were honored to have Dr. Parag Kalkar, Dean of Commerce and Management, SPPU, as our chief guest who inaugurated the event and enlightened us with his address. We had two eminent speakers on day one, Suchita Singh Basu and Dr. Arpita Kaul. The former had thrown light on a very relevant topic, the Great Churn. With the unprecedented pandemic, we have witnessed the adoption of a new work culture. And our second speaker, Dr. Arpita Kaul, spoke about the importance of work-life balance in today's new normal. Today, we started the second day of national webinar with a wonderful highlights on people analytics by Samir Munje, wherein he spoke about how human capital can make people analytics a success. We have to compete in a world where nothing is constant and nothing holds value for more than a couple of months. To help us surpass the same, Shweta Raina gave us insights about Future 2030. We also had engaging Q&A sessions with all our eminent speakers. The webinar provided an opportunity to listen to experts discuss, deliberate, and introspect on various important topics over a span of 2 days to create an ecosystem that shall prepare the current generation to set new benchmarks every day. As I take your leave, I would like to quote Albert Einstein, "Strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value." Thank you and happy learning. I now request Dr. Shubhita Tamankar, Associate Professor, Head of Department of Business Practices, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Gautam. Good afternoon to all. The honorable dignitaries, our esteemed guest speakers, invitees, faculty, and my dear students. On behalf of Department of Commerce of Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce, I propose my sincere vote of thanks to our first speaker for today, Mr. Samir Munje, for sparing his valuable time and guiding us about people analytics. Sir, thank you very much for giving us insights about the major role played by big data and people analytics and how it is becoming a prime field for career opportunities for our students. I also propose my sincere vote of thanks to our second speaker today, Ms. Shweta Raina, for giving us a view in Future 2030. Ma'am, your inputs will definitely help our students for upskilling themselves and become job ready in this very competitive job environment. I would also like to extend my vote of thanks to our earlier two speakers of yesterday, Mr. Chitra Singh Basu, who provided wonderful insights about the Great Churn, and Dr. Arpita Kaul for providing us insights on work-life balance. All the 4 sessions of this national webinar really provided us insights for understanding the dynamism in human market today and tomorrow. This great value addition done by the esteemed guest speakers from industry and academia will go a long way in understanding the future ecosystem and making our students ready for the future jobs. I would like to extend my sincere, heartfelt thanks to Dr. Parag Kalkar, Dean of Commerce and Management, Savitribai Phule Pune University, for inaugurating this webinar. I take this opportunity to thank our principal, Dr. Rishikesh Soman, Vice Principal, Dr. Tessie Thadatil, for their constant support in organizing this webinar. I also thank our registrar, Mrs. Gandhali Parulekar Madam, and our admin staff for their valuable help in organizing this webinar. Our special thanks to the IT team, Mr. Nazir and Mr. Nateen, for providing the total IT support for the webinar. I thank the entire faculty team of Department of Commerce, led by Mrs. Tripti Sharma and Tejaswini Shavde, for taking immense efforts in organizing this program and making it a big success. My special thanks to Devashri Deshpande for the wholehearted support and help extended by her in organizing this program. I also want to thank Ekata, Sakshi, Gautam, Josna, and all our student volunteers for the tremendous efforts that they have taken in organizing this webinar. And last but not the least, my thanks to all the students and faculty members for being a wonderful audience. Thank you one and thank you all. Now over to Josna for the instructions.
Thank you, ma'am. The link of the feedback form is available in the description of the YouTube link. I would hereby like to declare that the 2-day national webinar on dynamism in the human market today and tomorrow has been concluded. Thank you for being an amazing audience, and we wish to see more of such participation in the near future. Thank you.